Listen closely because the world you think you know is shifting right under your feet. Something historic just happened in the heart of Africa, and the mainstream media is absolutely silent about it. Captain Ibrahim Traore has just made a move that has sent the political elite in Washington, Paris, and Lagos into a total tailspin. He has ordered a full, televised court-martial of the former President Paul-Henri Damiba. This isn't just a legal proceeding. It's a public execution of the old guard secrets. Damiba didn't just get captured. He confessed. He told them everything. The names, the bank accounts, the foreign handlers. We are talking about a total exposure of the betrayal that has kept Burkina Faso in the dark for years. But let me ask you this. What if the very stability of the US dollar and the security of your own retirement fund are linked to the secrets being spilled in a courtroom in Ouagadougou? Could it be that the cheap resources we've taken for granted are the result of the very corruption Traore is now tearing down? Why are the most powerful leaders in West Africa suddenly losing sleep and scrambling to hide their tracks just because one man decided to tell the truth? This trial is the key to understanding why the global status quo is crumbling and why your future might look very different depending on what happens in the next few weeks. For too long, our brothers and sisters across the ocean have been told that their voices don't matter and that justice is only for those who can afford it. We've seen the same story play out for centuries. The powerful steal billions and walk free while the poor are crushed just for seeking a bit of dignity. But today, the air feels different. There is a fire burning in the Sahel that is warming the hearts of every person of African descent from the streets of Harlem to the shores of Brazil. It's a flame of hope, but also of a long overdue reckoning. This isn't just a trial of one man. It's a collision between a small, defiant nation and the massive machinery of global superpowers. It's David standing before Goliath. But this time, David has the receipts. If Traore succeeds, the era of the puppet leader is over. But if he fails, the chaos could trigger a crisis that hits every gas station and every grocery store in America. Why are the leaders of Nigeria and Ivory Coast so terrified of a little transparency? We're going to dig into the shadows they don't want you to see. If you believe in the truth and if your heart beats for the freedom of Africa, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button right now and share this video with someone who needs to wake up. This is more than just news. It's a movement. Let's show the world where we stand. Drop a comment below and type Africa Rise. Let them know we are watching. Let them know we are united. You are now witnessing the moment the masks finally slip. When Captain Ibrahim Traore stood before the people and announced that Paul-Henri Damiba had not just been brought back, but had actually started talking, you could feel the collective gasp across the continent. This isn't some dry legal document being read in a boring room. This is the sound of a system breaking. Damiba was the man who was supposed to be the protector. He wore the uniform, he took the oath, he looked the people of Burkina Faso in the eye and promised them safety from the terror that has been tearing their families apart. But the confession he's making now, it's a dagger to the heart of every patriot. He isn't just admitting to a coup attempt. He's admitting to a deep, dark collaboration with the very forces that are murdering innocent people in the countryside. To understand why this hurts so much, you have to look past the politics and see the faces of the people who have been paying the price for this betrayal. Let me tell you about a man named Yakuba. Yakuba is 48 years old, a hard-working father from a small village near the northern border. For decades, he tended his land, hoping to leave something for his children. But because of the chaos fueled by leaders like Damiba, Yakuba lost everything. He saw his village raided by the same terrorists that Damiba was supposedly fighting. Yakuba is now living in a cramped shelter, his hands calloused from years of labor, his eyes filled with a weary sadness that no person should ever have to carry. When he hears that his former president was secretly shaking hands with the men who burnt his farm, it's not just a political scandal to him, it's a personal violation. It's the ultimate betrayal of a father's struggle to provide. This is the human cost of the corruption that Traore is finally exposing to the light of day. And this is why the trial has to be televised. Traore knows that for too long. These deals were made in the shadows. He knows that the powerful have always had a way of making their sins disappear behind closed doors. But not this time. By putting this on national television, he is making sure that every citizen, every grandmother in the village, and every young student in the city can see the evidence for themselves. He is showing the world that in the new Africa, nobody is too big to face the law. Damiba thought he could hide in Togo. He thought he could sit behind his influential friends and wait for the storm to blow over. But the arm of justice is longer than he ever imagined. He's being charged with everything from money laundering to plotting assassinations. We are talking about millions of dollars that were supposed to be used for hospitals and schools, money that was meant to buy medicine for the sick and books for the children, ending up in private bank accounts and offshore funds. Think about the sheer audacity of it. While the people were being told to sacrifice, while the soldiers on the front lines were fighting with limited supplies, the man at the top was busy securing his own fortune. This wasn't just greed. It was a calculated destruction of a nation's future. Traore is making it very clear that this trial isn't about revenge. It's about accountability. It's about showing the deep state in West Africa that their time is up. There are so many brilliant minds in the African diaspora, men and women living in New York, London, and Paris, who have watched their home countries struggle for years. They are watching this trial with bated breath because they know that if Burkina Faso can break this cycle of corruption, it sets a precedent for the entire continent. They see Traore not as a dictator, but as a man holding a mirror up to the face of a broken system. The confessions coming out are like a domino effect. It's not just Damiba. More than 5 of his co-conspirators have already stood before the cameras, and the story they are telling is the same. They are begging for mercy, calling themselves Traore's subjects, trying to act like they were just caught up in something bigger than them. But Traore isn't buying it, and neither are the people. How do you ask for mercy when you were plotting to kill the very man who is trying to save the country? How do you ask for forgiveness when you were collaborating with terrorists who have left thousands of children orphaned? This is the point where the emotional enemy becomes very real. These aren't just names on a page. These are the architects of misery. The Western media loves to call this instability. They love to use words like undemocratic when they see a leader actually holding the powerful accountable. But ask yourself, what is more democratic than a public trial where the evidence is laid bare for everyone to see? In many of those so-called stable democracies, the elite steal billions and get a slap on the wrist. Here, Traore is saying that even a former president must answer for his crimes. He is building a system based on truth, not on backroom deals. This trial is a strategic map of the new Sahel. It shows that Burkina Faso is no longer a playground for foreign interests or a piggy bank for corrupt generals. It's a sovereign nation that belongs to people like Yakuba, the man who lost his farm but has finally found his hope again. As the details of the assassination plots and the foreign funding come to light, the panic in the neighboring capitals is becoming palpable. They know that if Damiba talks enough, he might just mention their names too, and that is exactly what they are afraid of. They are afraid of a people who are no longer blind. They are afraid of a youth that is asking why their leaders are living in palaces while the streets are crumbling. This trial is the beginning of the end for the old way of doing things. It's a warning shot fired across the bow of every corrupt official in West Africa. The truth is coming, and there is nowhere left to hide. This is where the story stops being a local news headline and starts becoming a global earthquake. You have to understand that what we are seeing in Ouagadougou is not just a courtroom drama. It is a grand masterstroke on a massive geopolitical chessboard. For decades, the West has looked at the Sahel region as nothing more than a source of raw materials, a place to extract gold, uranium, and cotton, while keeping the people in a state of perpetual managed instability. But Captain Ibrahim Traore has just flipped the table by ordering this televised trial. He isn't just seeking justice for a coup attempt. He is tearing up the old playbook of neocolonialism that has governed Africa since the 1960s. Let's look at the strategic map that the mainstream media refuses to show you. When you see the alliance of Sahel states, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger joining forces, you aren't just seeing 3 poor countries trying to survive. You are seeing a resource-rich corridor that is deciding to control its own destiny. And why does this matter to you sitting in the United States? It matters because the global financial system, the very one that supports the value of the dollar in your pocket, relies on the predictable flow of these resources under the old rules. If Traore succeeds in proving that the West was behind the destabilization efforts through puppets like Damiba, it changes the valuation of every ounce of gold coming out of that soil. It challenges the dominance of the euro and the dollar in a way that Washington and Paris never expected. In the dark rooms of Western intelligence agencies, There is a frantic effort to contain the fallout. They are used to dealing with leaders who make secret pacts, leaders who can be bought with a luxury villa in the south of France or a secret bank account in Switzerland. But they don't know what to do with a man who puts everything on television. This level of transparency is the ultimate weapon against the deep state. In the West, we are told that our systems are the gold standard of democracy. Yet how often do we see the true architects of financial crises or illegal wars actually stand trial in front of the cameras? Almost never. They hide behind national security or executive privilege. Traore is showing that real democracy is when the people are allowed to see the evidence with their own eyes, and the world is starting to notice. Think about the African diaspora, the millions of highly educated, hardworking people living in the heart of the West. Take someone like Sarah, a 45-year-old software engineer living in the suburbs of Washington, D.C. She grew up in Burkina Faso, saw the corruption of the old regimes, and moved to America to find a better life. She has a high-paying job, a nice house, and she pays her taxes, but her heart is still back home. For years, people like Sarah felt a sense of hopelessness, watching their homeland being looted by leaders who were more loyal to foreign capitals than to their own citizens. But now, she's watching these trials on her phone during her lunch break. She sees the pride returning to her people. She sees that the intelligence and talent of the diaspora are finally being invited back to build something real. This isn't just about politics for her. It's about the restoration of a stolen dignity. The contrast between Traore's transparency and the secrecy of the old guard is creating an emotional enemy out of the status quo. We are being shown that the instability we see on the news isn't an accident. It is a product. It is a manufactured chaos designed to keep the price of gold low and the influence of foreign powers high. When Damiba confesses to working with external handlers, he is confirming what the people have suspected for generations. He is admitting that the help from the West often comes with strings attached that strangle the host. This trial is exposing the hypocrisy of a system that claims to bring civilization while secretly funding the very terrorists that destroy villages. If this revolution in the Sahel continues, it will force a massive realignment of global power. We are talking about the end of the era where a few people in a room in Europe can decide the fate of millions of Africans. This is why the West African leaders in ECOWAS are panicking. They aren't just worried about their neighbor. They are worried about their own survival. They know that if the people of Nigeria, Ghana, or Senegal see that a leader can be honest, transparent, and defiant against exploitation, they will start demanding the same at home. The deep state in these countries is terrified that the light Traore has turned on will soon reach their own corridors of power. But there is a price to this defiance, and we need to be honest about it. The empire does not go quietly into the night. We are seeing a coordinated effort to squeeze Burkina Faso economically. We see the threats of sanctions and the withdrawal of aid. But what the West doesn't realize is that aid was often just a way to keep the country in debt. Traore is gambling on the fact that true sovereignty is worth more than a handful of foreign loans. He is betting that the people, like the farmer Yakuba we talked about earlier, would rather be poor and free than aided and enslaved. This is a high-stakes game of poker, and Traore has just called the world's bluff. He is showing that the smallest player at the table can win if they have the courage to play the truth. For the American viewer, especially those who have seen the world change over the last 60 years, you know that truth has a way of coming out eventually. You've seen empires rise and fall, and you've seen the consequences of secrets being kept from the public. What we are seeing in Burkina Faso is a rare moment where the curtain is being pulled back in real time. It's a moment where the K-Cam-XUC, the architects of corruption, are finally being named and shamed. This isn't just about Africa. It's about the universal human desire for a world where the law applies to everyone, not just those at the bottom. As we move forward, we have to ask, what happens when the names of the foreign financiers are finally revealed? What happens when the paper trail leads back to the very organizations that claim to be saving Africa? The fallout will be felt in the stock markets and the halls of power in the West. This trial is not just about the past. It is a prophecy of a future where the global South no longer asks for a seat at the table. They build their own table. The shockwaves from that courtroom in Ouagadougou aren't just staying within the borders of Burkina Faso. They are traveling south, east, and west. rattling the windows of presidential palaces across the entire ECOWAS region. You have to ask yourself, why are these seasoned politicians, men who have ruled for decades, suddenly acting like they've seen a ghost? It's because Ibrahim Traore has become a mirror, and when these leaders look into it, they don't like the reflection staring back. They see the fear in their own eyes. They see the crumbling foundations of their own power. Right now, there is a collective case of insomnia among the West African elite, and the reason is simple. Captain Traore is doing the one thing they have spent their entire careers trying to prevent. He is making the people think. Let's talk about Nigeria. The government there hasn't even tried to hide their disdain for what's happening in Burkina Faso. Remember last year when they flew a C-130 aircraft into Burkina Faso airspace without a single word of permission? That wasn't an accident. It was a message. It was the act of a regional bully trying to show a younger, defiant leader who is still in charge. But that backfired. It didn't intimidate Traore. It only proved to the people that their sovereignty was under threat from their so-called brothers. The tension between these two nations is thick enough to cut with a knife. Why? Because the Nigerian government is terrified that their own youth will look across the border and realize that they don't have to accept the status quo. The Nigerian leaders look at their own young people, millions of brilliant, hungry, and frustrated souls, and they see a ticking time bomb. They see what happened to Comrade Kadayo in May 2025. This was a man who didn't want to pick up a gun. He just wanted to hold a peaceful rally in support of the Burkina Faso revolution. And what did the democratic government of Nigeria do? They ransacked his office, detained him, and accused him of supporting a coup. They are so desperate to stop the inspiration of Traore from spreading that they are willing to crush the basic rights of their own citizens. They know that if their people start asking why their hospitals are empty while their leaders drive in 50-car convoys, the game is over. Then you look at Ivory Coast. This is a story that should make every person who believes in freedom absolutely furious. President Alassane Ouattara, a man who claims to be the champion of stability, recently won an election with over 90% of the vote. We all know what that means. It wasn't a contest. It was a coronation. And while he preaches about the dangers of autocracy in the Sahel, look at what he is doing in his own backyard. In a recent cabinet reshuffle, he created the position of deputy prime minister and gave it to his own brother. The same brother who is already the Minister of Defense. It is becoming a family business, a succession plan designed to keep power within a single bloodline for generations. This is the very definition of the deep state in West Africa. While the people of Ivory Coast watch their cocoa crops rot in the fields because the economy has stalled, their leader is busy building a dynasty. While the farmers are struggling to buy fertilizer, the elite are flying in private jets. This is the Kethu Kam Exuc, the emotional enemy that Traore is exposing. He is showing that the real threat to Africa isn't a young captain in a red beret. It is the old man in a suit who treats a nation like his personal bank account. This is why they hate Traore. This is why they supported Paul Damiba and his failed coup. They weren't trying to restore democracy. They were trying to protect their investments. They were trying to make sure the Burkina fever didn't infect their own populations. But the televised trial of Damiba changes everything. You see, when a man like Damiba starts talking to save his own skin, he doesn't just talk about his own mistakes. He talks about his backers. He talks about the secret meetings in Abidjan and the money transfers from Lagos. He talks about the phone calls with foreign intelligence officers who promised him protection if he could just remove the problem in Ouagadougou. As those names start to come out on national television, the panic will turn into a full-scale political meltdown. Imagine the fallout when the people of West Africa find out that their own taxes were used to fund an assassination plot against a leader who was actually fighting for African independence. This is a watershed moment. Traore is showing that the alliance of Sahel states isn't just a military pact. It is a moral one. It is a declaration that the era of the puppet leader is coming to a violent end. The leaders of ECOWAS are shaking because they know that for the first time in 60 years, they are losing control of the narrative. They can no longer hide behind the labels of stability and diplomacy. The youth of Africa are awake, and they are watching this trial with bated breath because they know that if they listen closely, they might just hear the sound of their own freedom ringing. They are comparing the transparency of Traore with the secrecy of their own presidents. Consider the impact on someone like Kofi, a 35-year-old teacher in Ghana. He spent his whole life being told that Africa needs Western-style democracy to succeed. But he looks at his own country's debt. He looks at the corruption in his own government. And then he looks at Traore. He sees a leader who is willing to put a former president on trial in front of the whole world. He sees a leader who lives simply and speaks directly to the people. Kofi starts to ask himself, why can't we have that here? Why is my leader more concerned with what Paris thinks than what I think? This is the ripple effect that keeps the elite awake at night. The trial of Damiba is the ultimate expose of the network of betrayal that has strangled West Africa for too long. It is showing that these leaders are not working for their people. They are working for a global system that rewards corruption and punishes honesty. Traore is tearing down the curtain, and the wizards behind it are scrambling to find a place to hide. But in the age of the internet and televised justice, there is nowhere left to go. The truth is out, and it is spreading faster than any government can suppress it. This isn't just a trial for Burkina Faso. It is a trial for the soul of the entire continent. And the verdict is already being written by the people in the streets. As we look at the high-definition screens broadcasting this trial to the world, we have to talk about the real cost of this moment. Justice is never free, and the price being paid right now is measured in more than just legal fees or court hours. It's measured in the very survival of a vision for a new Africa. Captain Ibrahim Traore knows that if he fails to deliver true accountability, the hope he has ignited will turn into a bitter cynicism that could last another 50 years. That is why the punishment for Paul-Henri Damiba has to be as absolute as his betrayal was deep. There are many voices calling for the ultimate penalty. But Traore is playing a much deeper game of chess by agreeing with Togo to forego the death penalty. Traore isn't showing weakness. He is showing a sophisticated understanding of international law and strategic optics. He is denying the West the chance to call him a bloody dictator. Instead, he is opting for something far more haunting, life in total solitary confinement. Think about that. For a man who craved power, who loved the luxury of the presidential palace and the company of influential world leaders, to spend the rest of his days in a small room, alone with nothing but the echoes of his own choices. It is a living death. It ensures that he cannot recruit from within the prison walls, cannot brainwash young soldiers, and cannot become a martyr for the old guard. It is a clinical, cold, and calculated form of justice that strikes fear into the hearts of other potential traitors. But why should this matter to you, an American citizen concerned about your own family's security and the future of your country? Because the deep state in West Africa is just one tentacle of a global monster that affects the price of everything you buy. When West African leaders like Damiba act as puppets for foreign interests, they ensure that the vast wealth of Africa, the gold, the lithium, the uranium, is sold for pennies on the dollar. This artificially low pricing has been a pillar of the global financial system for decades, as Traore and the Alliance of Sahel states demand the real market value for their resources. It challenges the very foundation of the U.S. dollar's dominance as the world's reserve currency. If the petrodollar was the story of the 20th century, the resource sovereignty movement in Africa is the story of the 21st. If these nations move away from Western-controlled financial systems, the impact on global inflation and your own retirement savings could be more significant than any policy coming out of Washington. We are watching a strategic realignment of the entire world. While the West threatens sanctions and speaks of democratic backsliding, powers like Russia and China are watching with intense interest. They see an opportunity to partner with a sovereign Africa that isn't looking for handouts, but for fair trade. This isn't just a local trial. It's the beginning of a massive shift in where the world gets its energy and its raw materials. For the American taxpayer, the question is simple. Do you want a stable, self-sufficient Africa that can be a genuine partner, or do you want to keep funding the managed chaos of the last 60 years that only benefits a few multinational corporations? The price of failure here is unthinkable. If Traore is removed, if the old puppets are reinstalled, the region will collapse into a vacuum of extremism and civil war. We've seen this movie before in Libya and in Iraq. When you destroy a movement for sovereignty, you don't get stability. You get a black hole of suffering that exports its problems to every corner of the globe. This is why the diaspora is so invested. They know that this is the one chance their homeland has to break the cycle. They are tired of being the collateral damage of global power plays. Let's look into the future. Because this trial is a prophecy. I mark my words. By the time we reach the next decade, the political landscape of West Africa will be unrecognizable. We are seeing the birth of a bloc that will eventually dictate its own terms. The leaders in Ivory Coast and Nigeria who are panicking today are right to be afraid. They are standing on the wrong side of history. In 2031, when the next generation of Africans goes to the polls, they won't be looking for the candidate backed by Paris or Washington. They will be looking for the leader who stood up when it mattered most. They will be looking for their own version of Traore. This brings us to the ultimate question of justice versus injustice. Is it just for a few families to own the resources of an entire nation while the elderly, like the people on this channel, have to worry about the rising cost of living? Is it just for a former president to collaborate with the enemies of his own people? Traore is saying no. He is drawing a line in the sand and telling the world that the price of betrayal is a lifetime of silence. He is showing that the price of liberty is eternal vigilance and the courage to hold the powerful to account. For our viewers who have seen the world change over the last 60 years, you know that truth has a way of coming out eventually. You've seen empires rise and fall, and you've seen the consequences of secrets being kept from the public. What we are seeing in Burkina Faso is a rare moment where the curtain is being pulled back in real time. It's a moment where the architects of corruption are finally being named and shamed. This isn't just about Africa. It's about the universal human desire for a world where the law applies to everyone, not just those at the bottom. As this trial moves toward its final verdict, the eyes of the world remain fixed on Ouagadougou. The world is waiting to see if a small, landlocked nation can actually defeat the combined weight of global neocolonialism. It is a David and Goliath story for the modern age, played out on our television screens. And as we watch, we have to ask ourselves, where do we stand? Do we stand with the puppets who keep the world in chains for their own profit? Or do we stand with the movement that is trying to build a future of dignity and self-reliance? I want to hear from you. This is a global conversation, and your voice is part of it. When you look at the courage of these people standing up for their rights, do you see a reflection of the values we hold dear? Do you believe that a nation has the right to judge its own leaders without foreign interference? This is the moment to speak up. Can Africa truly stand on its own? Drop a comment below with Africa can do it. If you believe that the era of puppet leaders is over, let's fill the comment section with a message of strength and solidarity. Let them know that we are watching and that we support the search for truth and justice. This is the final chapter of our journey today, the moment where we move from analysis to action. We've looked at the evidence. We've seen the betrayal, and we've felt the rising tide of hope coming from the Sahel. But as we bring this story to a close, remember that the struggle for justice is not just a fight for a piece of land. It is a fight for the soul of humanity. Captain Ibrahim Traore and the people of Burkina Faso are carrying a heavy cross right now, not just for themselves, but for every person who has ever been betrayed by those in power. They are teaching us that truth is a light that no amount of darkness can ever fully extinguish, no matter how many millions are spent to hide it. Tonight, as you reflect on what you have heard, I invite you to join us in a moment of solidarity that transcends borders and oceans. This is not just a video, it is a gathering of hearts. If you believe that every nation deserves to be free from the strings of puppet masters, and if you believe that justice should be a reality for the poor and the powerful alike, then I ask you to perform a simple act of faith with us. Please say Amen in the comments below. Let that one word echo across the digital world as a prayer for the people of Africa, for their safety, and for their ultimate victory over the shadows of the past. If your heart beats for Africa's freedom, and if you want to stand with us as we continue to shine a light on the stories the world tries to hide, then subscribe and join our family. Your support is the fuel that keeps this fire burning and ensures that these voices are never silenced. We are in this together, and together, we are an unstoppable force for truth. May justice finally prevail, and may the spirit of the new Africa inspire us all to stand a little taller tomorrow. God bless the people of Burkina Faso, and God bless you for standing with us. I stand with Africa. Do you?